if you can pass all the tests. Terry considered this, one athletic sandaled foot resting on the edge of the coffee table. The idea wasn't necessarily repellent, but Terry had always assumed he'd graduate college and take a job in his dad's firm doing, well, something with money. Whatever his dad and older brother did. He'd rent an expensive apartment in the Loop, spend every night with a new girl, and basically stay drunk until he hit 35 or so and was required to churn out grandchildren. "This is the end of the road for us, son," added his father. "Your brother and sister are settled, and frankly, we're tired of parenting. You can do this, or you can be on your own." "I don't care what my friends think about you working at Target," his mother put in. "I'll be in Palm Springs anyway." Huh. Terry rolled the idea around in his head like he was tasting a new microbrew. A beat cop? The idea wasn't exactly sexy. Then again, some girls were into guys in uniforms. And within a couple of years, surely Terry could advance up to captain or lieutenant or whatever, and eventually run the whole place. Maybe then he'd transfer over to the FBI. He could see himself in a tailored suit and expensive sunglasses, posing next to a corpse with a studious frown on his face as he spotted the crucial piece of evidence that had stumped all the locals. FBI agents had to get a ton of ass. "Okay," Terry said. "I'm in." The physical tests were a breeze, and for the first time in his life, Terry did do a little studying for the written exam. He passed with 2 points to spare, and very soon the department was sending him off to train at the academy. Terry's future, which he had always seen as hazy but bright, was at last decided. Beat cop, to detective, to chief, to FBI agent. Nothing to it. Terry muddled through the academy and his probationary years, but the only part of his job that he really enjoyed was the physical stuff. As much as he dreamed of chasing bad guys through a parkour-style maze of buildings, though, crime in Switch Creek was pretty much limited to a little embezzling and the occasional DUI. He couldn't believe how boring cops' lives were. He did have a brief spark of renewed excitement when he was 27 and the public became aware of the existence of vampires. For once in his life, Terry followed the news fervently, and he was elated when the state of Illinois, like several other states, grew tired of Congress's indecision and declared the consumption of human blood illegal. Terry's patrols were briefly more exciting as he told himself fantastical stories of Terry Anson, vampire hunter. He imagined catching a shade alive, which would surely let him leapfrog right over to the FBI's new vampire division. Within a few weeks, however, Terry finally realized that shades had about as much of a presence in Switch Creek as serial killers. In fact, no cop in all of Illinois had managed to spot anyone breaking the new law. It was a colossal disappointment. By then, 7 years had passed without a single promotion, and Terry had begun to get angry. All of his high school friends had graduated from law school or med school, paid for by their parents, of course, secured jobs in the city, and were coming back to settle down and start families. It would be one thing if Terry were, say, the chief of police, but he was a 28-year-old beat cop. It was embarrassing as hell. To avoid having to think too much about this, Terry began to drink, including when he was out on patrol. Little by little, the natural charm that had propelled Terry this far in life vanished, and his resentment soon turned into a suppressed rage that simmered just under the surface of all his interactions with the public. And then, in October, less than a year after the discovery of Shades, his parents announced that they had decided to sell the house, which meant that Terry, who hadn't exactly been frugal with his tiny public service paychecks, would need to find himself a shitty apartment. Faced with the loss of DVR, pool privileges, and an impressive place to bring women, something dark ignited in Terry Anson, something ready to explode. The situation could have followed a predictable progression into alcoholism and disgrace, turning Terry Anson into another of the cautionary tales that mothers in Switch Creek told high schoolers who didn't want to study. Before that could happen, though, Terry actually managed to bully his way into the life-altering moment he'd been longing for. That year, the Downtown Switch Creek Association had made the decision to